I have lived long enough to know that opportunities must be seized or they will be lost.
Before we start this episode, I do just want it to be known that we did have video originally for it. However, in the editing process, the video was lost, so this episode will be audio only. However, all episodes moving forward will have video. Enjoy. Okay, so welcome back to Wall Street Radio. I'm your host, Tanner, here with Dan, and today we're joined by my brother, Jonathan, who's going to be giving us a nice little perspective on the housing market, what he's seeing, why he's seeing it happen that way, and a little bit about himself and the industry and what's going on. Because Dan and I obviously have great perspective on the financial happenings of the world, but we do not have any real insight on boots on the ground housing market. So we're going to jump right in. And yeah, we've got video on for this call. So yeah, let's get started.
Good afternoon.
Sorry, before we begin, I have to remove all the bones from my dog's mouth.
Unreal. Well, I appreciate you being here first and foremost, just because, like Tanner said, there's this idea of having a big picture of what's happening in the market, especially when we're following the stock market every day. But housing is so nuanced, and from like land to real estate, big city to small city, like it changes so dramatically. So like getting your perspective in New York, and like some hot like commercial areas is going to be really important, especially because we're seeing the market decline so much right now. So like, how's the buyer behavior? How are people reacting? Are they putting in cash offers? Like, I'm really interested about that. But yeah, so why don't you like tell us a little bit more about yourself, the beginning and all that?
Yeah, so thanks for having me, guys. Excited to be on Wall Street Radio. It's an interesting time in the market for sure. I started 6 years ago in August of 2019. So I had 6 months before COVID hit. So I got like a little brief period of the pre-COVID market. I got to see what that looked like, how it was going. And it's funny, I went to a launch party like maybe right at the end of February, beginning of March 2020. And I was in there and it was like the party was never going to stop. I mean, that sales, they were like, bring all your people. It's going to be amazing. And then 2 weeks later, the whole market crashed. And everything completely changed. And honestly, I've watched the rebuild of New York since, which has been very fascinating to me. So I've been in the business 6 years. I have my own team now. I started that in the fall of 2024. It's been amazing. There's 5 people that work with me. They're all great, killers. I look for people that are, very honest and forward about what they want and how I want people that want to learn. That's like my biggest thing. Come to me with an excitement to learn. The housing market has so much to learn about. I work in the city. I work in the Hamptons in the summer. I help a lot of people move out there for summer rentals. That's like their hottest market. I mean, people rent houses for like $100,000 for a month. So there's definitely like a lot of cash flow out there. And then I do work in LA a little bit. I have a couple clients that look for houses out there. So I help them when I need to. But for the most part, my primary market is Manhattan.
And just to kind of give again some more context for you personally, when you went to college and then decided you wanted to do real estate after the fact, so you're taking a degree into the market of real estate. Do you think that helped you at all? Because I know some of our listeners are of a younger variety and some of them are interested in real estate. Do you think getting the college degree has helped you? Do you think it set you up better, gave you more time? Like, what was that transition like from going to college right into the market? Obviously, it took you a long time to really build up your book. Do you think that's pretty common?
I think college polished me. At 18 and then 22, I was 2 very different people. And college gave me 4 years to really figure out what I wanted, what I liked, how to hone in on the skills that I needed to. I really cleaned up my writing while I was in college. I took a lot of extracurricular writing classes. Writing is a huge aspect of this job. Communication is a very large aspect of this job. At 18, the way I was communicating with people was frankly a mess. And college really cleaned me up. It made sure that I was going to be there on the right page by the time I started interacting with clients. So I do think it was important. I focused on marketing and entrepreneurship in college. That was like my 2 majors. So for me, this all lined up perfectly. It taught me how to study. It taught me how to analyze. All of the analysis classes that I took that I hated, I now have come to love and like use every day. So I think there is definitely, I know we're very like anti-college now, but I really like stand behind my degree, and I'm very happy that I have it in a job where most people just like pulse up and then they let you in. So it's nice to like have a little bit more education behind me before I got into it.
Yeah, because when you started, you were in with what, a team of 50, and by the end of the first year, you were one of the last people there, right?
Yeah, so in my training group, I trained with 20, and after the first year, there were 5 of us left. As of today, I'm the only one left.
Yeah. And that's because the comp structure is at the beginning, you don't get a salary. It's all just based on your own sales and what you can do.
Yeah, no, I've never gotten a salary, so that was really a fun little conversation to have when I wanted to get into it. But to be honest with you, I knew it was all going to work out when I did my first deal in 2 weeks. It was my first 2 weeks. I did a deal, and I thought for sure, I was like, okay, yep, this is it. Like, it's supposed to work out, because I meet people that never close a deal, you know? So the fact that things have just kind of rolled for me in the way that they have, I've always just kind of known that it was going to work. And I work really hard at it. So that, coupled with a little bit of luck, it works out.
Yeah. And with COVID starting right when you started, making that switch into selling mostly in the Hamptons, which a lot of people were doing over that first summer, do you think that was a big contributor to that success early on? Were most people just not recognizing that that was the play, and a lot of people were just trying to get out of the city?
Honestly, I connected with someone during the first 6 months in the office, and she worked out in the Hamptons. Had a ton in the Hamptons. It works a little differently. Like, the rentals out there are all open listings, so all of the owners allow anyone to post them, and then as we get clients in, we approach the owners, and then we put together the lease and do all of the negotiation. Um, I ended up getting paired with somebody. She asked me if I wanted to come and help her. She had a ton of open listings, and so she was just getting like an influx of people that were all moving out to the Hamptons. So I started working like 18-hour days out of my parents' basement when I moved back home. Um, and I was just down there for like 3 weeks. We ended up closing like, I don't even remember. We closed like 2 million in rentals in 10 days, which was crazy. It was like 25 deals, I want to say. Like, it was just an obscene number. I did one deal for like 150,000 a month. It taught me a lot. It got me really good at identifying what clients wanted. That was like kind of a juggernaut. And it taught me a new market. I mean, I didn't know anything about the Hamptons. I told everyone I did, but I didn't know shit. So I like had to learn it all while I was on the phone with these people. Like, yep, that's a great area. I'm like street viewing all night long, trying to figure out where the hell they are. Um,
One question I had real quick. I just don't know anything about the fee or like how leasing or short-term rentals work from a like profitability standpoint for a business for
yeah.
real estate. Like, how does that differ from like a normal home sale?
So in the Hamptons, on a summer rental, your commission is 10% of the lease term. So on 150 grand, you make 15,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's gross, like before
Yeah,
splits and
yeah.
everything. So you'll make 15,000. It can be very, very lucrative. Some people I know like work for 3 months, just do a ton of summer rentals, and then they don't have to work again for the rest of the year. Um, I don't personally love that structure of work. I like to work all year. There's something about like the continuous work that I enjoy. But some people, if you got it like that and you can do it like that, be my guest.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's definitely different than like typical like sales. But I mean, everything closes a lot faster. I was closing rentals in 24 hours. So I mean, from inception of the call to the close, I was, my hourly rate was crazy.
Yeah. How far in advance will people do that? Like, for example, it's March now. The summer's coming up quick for the Hamptons. Are you starting to see people? Like, would you see people in March, April, or will it be
Most people are already looking. Like, you
Okay,
start looking in like January, February.
got it.
The market kind of cooled off in the last 2 years. It's starting to pick back up though. After COVID really settled out, everyone went back to Europe. That was like that heavy market. There was a ton of people going to Europe before then. Then they stopped being able to travel. But then once that really opened up, the market kind of slid down a little bit in terms of demand, just because people had somewhere else to go for the first time in 3 years. But it's definitely coming back from what I've seen, and the people I've been talking to out there. They're starting to see it turn back around.
Mm-hmm. And this was early on in your career. This is when you were still under another team.
Yeah.
From your own personal business perspective, I mean, I remember you were home, so I was home too. But I remember, us having conversations about splits and about how it works, like on a team and all that. So why don't you just walk us through that from the perspective of being on somebody else's team to now having your own team, like how that works, how deal flow happens.
Yeah, I think when I was first starting out, and I mean, this is teams in general. You'll often find like the juniors are just not making a ton of money. The whole idea is that you're paying for the experience, which I understand. And I've learned a ton from the people that were my team leads. I attribute both of them to a ton of my knowledge, but you end up just like not making a lot. You know what I mean? Like you're running around, you're doing so much work, and like you're really just not making a lot of money. Most teams probably have somewhere between like a 60 to 80% split, somewhere around there. And then that'll be distributed out amongst the team after that. When I first started on deals that I was just like assisting with, I was making like 20% of the net post split. So, it was not crazy money. I think that's the illusion. And I think that's why a lot of people get into real estate and they just think that they're going to just like start printing money the moment that they close a deal. And it's just like could not be further from the truth. And by the way, like they don't take any taxes out. So now you have to worry about like saving money for a year to pay your taxes. Like you think you get this big check and then by the time it gets eaten up, it's a very normal check. um, Even like the biggest deals, the money goes quick.
So that's when you were on that team. So now that you are the team lead, you're the one where people are bringing you deals and then you're helping them, or they're doing it all on their own. You're taking a fee. What does that look like from the team lead perspective now that you're on the other side of it?
Yeah, so now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm trying to kind of rewrite the narrative of what I want from the team and how I want them to get paid. Everything that they bring in, they get what they would get as a split with the house, which is usually 50-50 when you start. So even though we have a higher team split than 50-50, I give them exactly what they would get if they were not working with me. I want them to be incentivized not to work with me. If they were going and working for the house, making more money, I of course would do that as well. I would go and just work for the house. I would never come and work for me. Um, but I'm providing them the mentorship and the lessons, and I do give clients out. I bring them onto deals with me to show them how I do it. Um, but for the most part, they're bringing in all of their business, and when they bring it in, they get a very nice split from it, which is what I want. I don't want people hungry, and by the time I like really started to phase out of the team, like being under somebody, I had just become very resentful of the fact that I wasn't making the money that I knew I should be just because of how much I had done at that point. So I just like to make sure that they don't feel like they're being taken advantage of and are excited to come to work every day. I want to keep people around.
Yeah. And from like, it's easy for us to talk about the splits and the fees and the money and all that. But at the same time, I don't think people appreciate the value of the network as much and like what that means for your actual book and your actual sales. Like, would you say early on when you were like, oh, I wish I were getting paid more, but you had no network, it was easier for you to accept it? But then once you had your network, you realized, hey, wait a minute, I've got a huge capacity here with this network now that I've built out over the last 3, 4, 5 years. I don't need somebody to help me find deals anymore. And at that point, you were finding more deals for yourself than your team's network was bringing in for you.
Yeah, I definitely, when I was starting out, I didn't have a network. I meet a lot of kids that are like from the city and they do real estate here, and their mom and their dad are best friends with everybody in the town, and they're closing $10 million deals because their mom's friend knew somebody. It wasn't like that for me. We don't have family here. So when I moved here, for the last 10 years, it has literally just been me. Trying to figure out like, how the hell am I going to convince people that they should sell their house with me? They don't even know me. So that in the beginning, I needed people behind me. I needed their business behind me. I needed their expertise. I needed that support to make sure that people were being taken care of. I didn't know everything. I had some people take really early chances on me, and thank God they did. But I needed the support behind me. And then once it got to the certain point where I felt like I knew enough to really branch out on my own, I did. And now it's funny, like I'm being asked the questions that I used to ask. And I'm like, okay, this is good. Like I've moved to the point now where like the question is circling back to me, although I'm on the other side of it now, which to me is a sign that, it was time. to build something else and stop working for other people.
I'm just curious to bleed in a little bit. We were talking about like college earlier. For me, especially, like I think everyone should go to college, not because of like the education, but the street smarts and just like the life that you learn in those 4 years. Taking me in my professional career was by far the most impactful and like success. Like for you and your relationships with people, because real estate, as you said, is like highly driven by networking. Would you say like getting out all those kinks that happened in college with like just maturity and professionalism, like that was important for you?
Absolutely. I needed college to kind of like just shake me out a little bit. Like who I was. We grew up in a very small town. I didn't have the perspective that I have now and that I had after 4 years in college. I studied abroad for a semester. That gave me like an entirely different perspective on the world. It got so much bigger. It became very much a much more international mindset to me, which I needed, especially in the city, especially in real estate, to build out that network. You have to be able to interact with so many different kinds of people, and being very adaptable. I think college was incredibly important for that.
Yeah. Speaking of like international, how many of your clients are from the US versus like internationally driven into like, I guess not for short term, but like purchasing homes in New York specifically?
Most of my clients are native
Okay.
New Yorkers for the most part. I work with a lot of first time home buyers. That market has just proven to be very fruitful for me.
Mm.
It's a level of client that they're honestly like they're very grateful clients. I love to give like very high levels of service, but I love to give them to people that don't really necessarily get treated in that way. They're very grateful for it. They are asking questions that are, things I can answer really easily. It's a little bit more, it's a much more close environment. I do work with some like big time investors about like buildings and, bigger trophy properties. It's not a very personal experience. It almost feels like selling office space. And I didn't go into commercial because I don't like the non-personal aspect of it. And when you get to certain price points, the personal relationship kind of falls away. It's not really about that anymore. It's like, well, what's the investment going to be and what's the bottom line, which is fine. I love to talk about numbers, but it's definitely a little different. So most of my people are native New Yorkers or transplants that have been here a long time. They're looking to buy their first property, things like that.
As far as what you're seeing right now, I know, we talk a lot, but just for the audience sake, recently you've been telling me more about, I feel like I've heard more from you about buildings and like not wholesale. I guess it would be called wholesale, like multiple lots being sold at once, like full buildings versus
Yeah.
like individual townhouses or homes. Over the last few years, what has the kind of ebb and flow looked like from more people looking for individual homes, like residential or full buildings or office space? Like where are you seeing that trend going right now? Because, you and I have a conversation all the time about like what you're selling for that week. And I feel like lately I've heard more bigger deals than like smaller ones.
It's funny, like, and you are really on the front lines of what I'm doing every week. And it does really ebb and flow based on who my clients are for the week. And I call them clients of the week because that's kind of how it operates. 2 weeks ago, I met an investor, and then now I'm starting to work on like a building deal. And that's somebody that only buys buildings. He does not buy single family. So when I look at him, he's somebody that I'm like, okay, this is the only kind of product you're going to buy from me. You're never going to buy a single family home. But I have other people that call me and they only want a single family home. They are never going to buy a $35 million building. It's, very up and down. I would say the market in general, though, in the city now, I just had someone tell me I met an investor the other day and he told me that he's never had a realtor tell him it's a bad time to buy a house. And I always think that is so interesting because I do think realtors get this rap for just constantly saying like it's the best time ever to buy. Um, and I told him, I was like, I never have a client set a record. And he asked me what I meant by that. And I just said, there was a time in the city where every realtor was advising their clients to buy, and everyone was setting a record. Price per square foot was just constantly being beat left and right every day. And I never want my clients to buy in that scenario ever, because you'll never get your money back. And then in 5 years, when you call me to sell it, I'm going to have to tell you didn't make any money. It was a bad investment, which in turn does not create a positive relationship with my clients. Right now, the market for the last 10 years is it's a stalemate. It's the 2016 to 2018 market in the city was like peak years. Those were really, really hot. everyone was buying back then. The market was crazy. Everybody was setting records. The price per square foot was huge. I wrote about it in my newsletter in October of 2023 that I started to notice this trend that houses that were being sold from that time were selling at cost or at a loss. Forbes in August of last year released an article verifying that exact trend that I had picked up in the October before, which was super cool. They did not quote me, but I'm going to say that they definitely read my newsletter and stole that from me.
Don't worry, we do the same thing. Bloomberg did that to us a couple of months ago. We wrote a piece on OnCloud, those shoes, and literally, what was it, Dan? 3 days later, they had the same piece, but even some of the same photos. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
It's crazy. It's really crazy. But you know what? My math was right. My thoughts were right, and I was happy to see that come back in something as official as Forbes.
Well, that's the thing. Sometimes you have to wonder, like, if the people at Forbes have not been in the industry as long as you. Like, is that ever a thought? Like, these people that are writing these articles, maybe they're not as, like, they don't have the experience. So you would like expect to catch things earlier than like an entry level analyst who's writing that piece.
Yeah. Can you guys hear this construction in the back? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's fine. It's all right.
I can close my window. It's literally, hold on. Let me just fix it.
That's New York for you.
That's living in the city. Honestly, I anticipated that would happen. We'll get some construction. It's fine, John. Don't worry about it.
It's so annoying. It's been driving me crazy for like the last week.
Yeah.
I'm like, could you not? Anyway.
So you mentioned New York City in like 2016, 2018. Do you think, and we've had this conversation before, and it's always been the most fascinating, do you think New York City is a leader for the rest of the market around the country? Do you think there are some cities that lead the market in that way, like in price per square footage or like in activity and home buying? Like, because I think we've talked about Miami being one of those cities that kind of is like a flagship for the rest of the
I was just about to say.
Yeah.
Miami is where people look first. It's kind of the canary in the coal mine for the rest of the country. You can see kind of what's coming up, what's about to happen when you look at the Miami market. However, I do think the Miami market is going to be a little skewed now because there was such an enormous boom of construction down there. They just have an absurd oversupply now. I mean, every single new building is being built down there. So I think I think that market is going to have a different environment than some other players than it used to. It didn't used to have this like major construction vibe. And I think that's going to skew the data now. I don't know if it's necessarily going to remain like top of mind for people. And I do think, traditional suburbs are changing. Since COVID, everything has kind of changed, to be honest. Like our definitions have changed, where we look has changed. I mean, the fact that Rochester is number 3 is like the number 3 hottest market for 2025.
What's going on?
Crazy. Like that's insane. And Buffalo is like a very close 5 under that. It's like at number 8. I just like, these are cities that like we grew up in and we're like, nobody's ever going to know about this town. And now it's like every news source is like, it's one of the hottest markets. It's crazy. I think, the biggest problem is that the suburbs saw such an inventory collapse, and everybody that locked in these like really, really low rates now at 6-7%, they're not moving. So you have nobody that wants to move, and everybody else that wants to buy can't get property. I just talked to someone actually who works in Buffalo, and she was telling me, she's like, I can't get a deal done. People are just buying houses for still so high over ask. She's like, I can't even. I was offering 150,000 over, and somebody offered more. I do think the issue, and I've been saying this for a long time with this market, is that people are starting to buy the appreciation. So I think, where you used to get kind of a deal on a house, now I think you're buying the appreciation in 10 years. So I think you're really going to have to hold these houses for like 20 years to see like another really big jump, unless you get really lucky and the house market just boop. But there is a ceiling. Like there will be a limit for these houses. Like eventually people are going to realize that the $400,000 house is not actually worth $1 million. Like it's just not.
Yeah.
And I think that is where you'll start to see the slowdown. Hopefully people wake up, because we're just spending obscene amounts of money on houses.
I had a quick question. So I wrote an article for Sebs like 2 weeks ago. I think it's called Open House, and it talks about a lot of different factors stemming off the financial crisis. One of the big things is birth rates, and the decline in birth rates in couples dropping from, I think, 75 to 55%. So like that's
Interesting.
drastically declining. And then in the next 5 years, we have the largest retirement window that the US has ever seen, with the majority of boomers retiring. Like these factors, when just like mentioning that in terms of like a decline in birth rate, retirements, while that won't impact New York City too much, in my opinion, because it's generally a younger area and most move out to Long Island or New Jersey or Connecticut for the suburbs, like what kind of impacts do you think that will have? Because what I've seen, and like from my generation, I'm 33, a lot of renters. Like I still rent a ton, like whenever I'm living places, because I'm not really wanting to settle down and pay the prices as you're talking about. For me, I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to pay the appreciation right now. So do you think you're going to have to cater your business to be more towards the rental, or do you think that the buying of like new homes for individuals will stay strong even if we like decline in birth rates? And so I'm not talking about like next 2-3 years, but I'm just curious on like your high level thoughts, like 3 to 5, 10 years out.
Yeah, I think, since COVID, rents have gone up 25% year over year. You see them,
Volume, you're saying?
no, like
Oh,
the
price.
cost.
Okay.
Yeah,
They're
they've gone up
absurd
about
right they're absurd
they've
right
gone up
now.
about 25%, and they're expected to go up another 5 to 7% this year. So that would be about a 30% increase in 5 years, which is crazy. Like people are really starting to spend a lot of money on rent. And I understand, oh, the house prices are so high, but I think it's going to get to the point where we start to meet a delta that buying is actually the same cost as renting. I
Hmm.
think for a while it's been like, it's cheaper, it's cheaper. I think the window is starting to get smaller. However, the issue is like people have become such chronic renters at such high prices that they don't have the money to buy the house. That's their biggest issue. They don't have the down payments because so much of the money has just been going to this place that you never see it return. Um, that's been my biggest struggle with people is that I get calls all the time, $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a month for rental, but they're not liquid. They just like they're getting paid a lot of money monthly and then they're just pissing it wherever, and there's no liquidity, which you need to buy a house, obviously.
Yeah.
Especially in the city, you need more of a down payment. Like I know in the suburbs, it's like 3%. People can put down like 1%. You can't do that in the city. It's like minimum 10%. So people need the cash. I would say though, in general, like the rentals, I think, depending on where you are, depending on what the supply looks like, places like Austin, those really hot markets for the last couple of years, they've completely crashed since. Like their housing market has crashed more or less. Like they went from being some of the hottest markets to some of the coldest, which works out for people that are looking to rent instead of buy. I would say 5 to 10 years, though. I just think, the housing crisis that we're having across the country is crazy. Um, I the old people that are retiring, the drop in birth rates. It's hard for me to speak on because I live in the city of like nobody has a kid and everybody's single at 40. Like it's
Yeah.
so it's like I don't necessarily know if I can like speak on it directly.
Yeah.
I will say from what I observe from our hometown, I speak on Rochester a lot because it is somewhere that I can look at pretty objectively. Um the biggest market that we saw blow up there over the last 5 years has been ranch homes. And I mean, ranch homes used to sell for 150 grand, 200 grand. In the nice towns, they were 350, 375. Now they've got new dev ranch homes for 700, 800, 2 bedroom, little tiny boxes, and that market, that's indicative of something. Like there
Yeah.
was a missing market and they filled it. And I can't believe people are spending $800,000 on 2 bedroom houses, but they are, you know. Um, I think there needs to be a move back to the cities. A lot of people dispersed out into the surrounding areas that were kind of sheltered from huge influxes of demand because it was just kind of like the people that were living there were living there. So I think we'll have to see how that trickles back out. Like, will there be another move back into cities? I know a lot of people are calling their offices back, which I'm most curious to see how that affects the housing in the suburbs.
Hmm.
I think that's been a big reason. Like, a lot of people moved to Arizona during the time where everyone could be remote because Arizona is really cheap and the houses were big and their taxes. But now that they've been called back to the office, Arizona's market has kind of in a way that it's not as many young people. Like I think you'll see a lot of people retiring, like moving to those places now because the housing market isn't as crazy as where they currently live.
Do you see the same market right now in LA? I lived in LA for a couple of years. I'm just curious, like between New York and LA, is it the same thing that's going on, or is it different? I know it's like much different structures for the cities.
LA is hot. I mean, those fires are really going to have an effect on that city. The thing with LA that I notice, it's very you're kind of always just like wishing on a dream out there, you know? It's like my house isn't insurable and it may catch on fire at any moment and there may be an earthquake that knocks it off the country and the mudslides when it rains too much. It's like there's always something going on. What I find is that people that live in California like really buy into it. I know you don't live there anymore, but like everyone I meet from out there, it's like it's fine. It doesn't matter. Fire season, no problem. Mudslides, not a worry. Earthquakes, never gonna happen. Like nothing you can say out there seems to matter. Like everyone's still buying houses. It doesn't matter. Their biggest problem was the tax that they put on houses over $1 million. That like really the mansion tax out there really, really hit them hard for the last few years. That's why like they were calling, like there's been a group that's been calling for them to like stop the mansion tax while people are trying to like buy new houses after the fires because it really did affect our market pretty heavily.
What is that? Do you know by chance?
I don't remember what the exact number. I can tell you right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious just because when I was living out there, there was always reference of it. I was living in like right outside West Hollywood
Oh,
for
okay, nice.
3 years. So it was a great area, but you'd see these like very small homes being torn down and they put up mansions and people would go like picket
Yeah,
the front lawns with like the mansion tax, no more mansions, all this stuff. So I was curious.
yeah. So it's 4% tax on property sold over 5 million, and then a 5.5% for homes over 10 million,
Okay.
which is high.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
a lot.
it's a lot. And that honestly, when that first went into effect, like a lot of people were trying to sell their house before the tax went into effect. Once it did, then you started to see the house pricing come down, um, because now it was harder for people to want to pay all that money, like pay the premium and then pay the tax on top of it.
Hmm.
So that kind of gets baked into asking prices now.
Interesting.
Yeah. LA is an interesting animal. It's like not really a city, but it's like not really the suburbs. I don't know. It's like kind of everything and nothing.
Yeah.
Culturally, it's very different out there than New York. Like, if somebody were to tell me, oh, yeah, you can't get your home insured for fire or earthquakes or mudslides in a place where it happens all the time, like, I'm just not living there. So I think culturally, it's a very different beast on the West Coast. I know, Dan, we've talked about this a bunch, like how there's just, especially from like a working perspective, there's a very different culture out there than there is over here. That blows my mind that there's not really an impact too much on the market from all these things, given the fact that, dude, you can't get it. Like, how are you going to live somewhere that costs you millions of dollars if you can't even get it insured for what happens?
People buy into it. Like it is such a, if you love LA, you love California, like you're just in it. Like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like the fires don't matter. Like it's the weirdest thing because to me, and maybe this is because we grew up on the East Coast and I just do not really mess with natural disasters. Like the biggest thing we ever had was like snowstorms, whatever. You know, like we're prepared for those. So I'm like a little more natural disaster adverse when it comes to looking at housing markets. I've been getting a ton of videos right now of Tornado Alley because it's tornado season. And, you know, it's just like all these people out there just living in these big houses, filming the tornadoes. It just like rips their mansions apart. I'm like, oh my God, like people really just put themselves in the line and they don't care. You know, it's like, go, it's time to clean out the storm shelter for the season. Like I didn't have a storm shelter going up, you know? So I think it's what people are used to. If you grow up around that, it doesn't matter.
Have you heard any stories about, like, we see it in like Hawaii when there was the big fire there, and now we're seeing it in California. Do you hear any stories about investors or anybody that goes into these areas specifically to take advantage of the fact that like there's just recently been a natural disaster? Like what?
Yeah.
Can you shed some light on any of those stories, like whether or not they're true or like what that actually looks like?
I mean, you know, institutions love to take advantage of people at times of need. Um, I think we're definitely going to see a lot of institutions gobble up some of that land. The hardest part is that it's like that land, it's toxic. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of shit that just burned on it. Like people aren't really going to want to live there right away. You know, I mean, people obviously are. It's a very desirable area, but I also, I don't know. I'm hoping that we don't see as many people lose their ability to rebuild their houses as they're expecting. Um, but the Palisades, from what I understood about them, it's a lot of people that have lived there a long time. It's not like just a bunch of little McMansions that were just built. These are people that have lived there for a long time. They had families. They weren't like necessarily the richest. Some of the areas were, but there was a lot of like just regular working people there that had houses. Um, and when your house burns down, your mortgage doesn't go away, you know? So, and they all, unfortunately, most of them lost their insurance like months before that fire hit. Eh, I don't necessarily buy into the whole like the government is burning places down to reclaim land bit. I think they're incompetent and know that things are going to happen and don't do anything about it because they just like think that it's not like they just put things off until things happen. That's more of the camp that I'm in. And I think you saw that with California. Like they knew the fires were gonna happen. They just were kind of hoping that they weren't. And they did. And it was like very major. So yeah, I don't know. I think institutions will, as always, look for opportunity to buy when people are down bad. And you know what? There are people that will sell to them, and that's the reality. But I don't think institutions are necessarily like I don't think they're making as much money on their purchases as people thought they were. Like I think in the beginning they thought that it was just like a slam dunk forever, and I don't think so anymore. I read somewhere recently that like BlackRock started to offload a lot of their single families because they weren't making money on them from what I understood. I have to fact check that, but
I
I
saw
read somewhere. Did you
Yeah,
see that?
I saw that too. And then like I know Zillow and Redfin took a lot of big losses on homes that they were buying, like
Yeah.
20% because they were buying in that appreciation and then they realized a year later like we're screwed.
Well, Zillow was buying your house based on like they had their own
The Zestimate.
they yeah, but they tried to like start their own brokerage through it. Like they were trying to become like a brokerage in a way, and it just like didn't work. Like they were just like buying houses, you know what I mean? Like left and right. Just and Daniel, you mentioned something very early on. Like there is a lot of nuance to real estate, and that's why everyone always asks me, like, aren't you worried about AI taking your job? I'm like, no, because I caught a trend months before it really took off. And the only reason I did that was because I'm on the ground paying attention. Like the markets that I'm looking in and I'm looking at the sales history. It's like you can train an AI to do that, but it's not gonna pick it up as seamlessly. You know, like what's going on here? Why does this keep happening over and over? Um, and there's a personal connection that you can't get through a computer,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. A lot of trends too, they have to do with buyer behavior and sentiment. And like that's human psychology.
Hmm.
Like when you start feeling that, you can imagine another human buyer or seller will start feeling that. AI won't, at least now or ever, be able to like have that human connection. That's like when Tanner and I are talking about the markets and we see what's happening or thinking about how we feel about things. It's very relatable to tens of thousands of people because, and the market ends up doing that thing unless it's something like a financial crisis, which has more financial, like again, like fundamental financial backbones that fall apart. But most of the time, it's just like, where's the risk? Are people scared? Like that's, fear drives markets. And so the human component of that can't be like undervalued.
Yeah, no, I think it's so funny. I always ask people like, what do you like about service? Like, what do you miss in service? Like, I'm always polling people to just try to figure out like what's going on. And the feedback I get so much now is like, I'm so sick of talking to a computer. Like, I can't get on hold with somebody real. And my thing in building this team was we're going to be the realist. I want you on the phone with these people. Like, I want these people to know that we are real ass people. Um, and I think I get calls all the time. Oh, we'll have somebody answer your calls for you, set up your meetings. I'm like, no, no, no. When they answer the call, I want it to be, hello, this is Jonathan. Like, I want it to be me on the other end of the line, not some computer. I get emails from the AI feedback people all the time. It's like the way I have to email them back 9 times just to get a representative. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to set up a showing, you know?
I think in a lot of industries they can get away with it because the comps are really low or like non-existent at all. But in like finance or even in real estate, like our dad talks about it all the time, where he's like, "Can you imagine if I were trying to separate somebody from millions of dollars and some AI got on the phone and said hello?"
Literally.
And it just wouldn't be possible. So I think in that regard, like your industry especially is protected a little bit because nobody's going to want to buy a home from somebody and pay a fee for doing so if they're not even going to get like feedback from you, the person who's actually helping them with the sale or the purchase. So yeah, I don't see we might eat our words here, but I don't see too much impact on either of our industries in the near term from AI, just because there's so much nuance that comes with experience. I mean, at this point now, Dan and I have been ahead on trends and themes like years in advance. And AI is always looking for the right answer the fastest, but they don't look until they don't find any more right answers. Like they'll get to one stop, hit the answer, and then give you that as feedback. They don't keep going until they get no more answers and then assess it. And I think until that changes, nuance is something that it will never have because it doesn't have the ability to take 20 right answers and analyze the best one. It just gives you the first right one that it has.
That's
Yeah,
really interesting.
AI will always give you the known, right? But like what's valuable is the unknown. And so
Exactly.
that's where we're like, we always drive, I guess, our value. We have a phrase, show me the value. It's like,
Yeah.
that's like the main thing. So would you recommend right now, so let's say someone's like 30 years old, they're in the city, they're paying $4K a month for a studio in Williamsburg. Are you saying buy? Or are you saying like wait? They're coming to you for advice, right? Like I'm looking to buy first time. Maybe they have cash flow, they have liquidity. Are you saying right now that there's still this appreciation in the market that they should stay still, or would you make that recommendation to like buy? And they're looking to stay within like one of the major boroughs, like close to the city.
Yeah. I think if you've got the money, I keep saying now is a great time for resale. New dev is always a little bit of an animal because it's kind of like buying a new car. Like you're buying at the top and then you got to wait on it. It doesn't depreciate because it's not like a car in that sense, but it definitely has like a pullback before it goes back up. I would say if you've got the money to do it, start looking at resale property and call me while you do it. It definitely there's opportunity to be found. I just went and toured a 1-bedroom the other day and it was so cheap. I mean, if you needed something small and easy and functional, you can still pick stuff up for like 350 grand in the city, 300 grand.
Wow.
And I think you will see appreciation on those. My biggest thing is what a lot of people are looking for, Street Easy, which is like one of our big search platforms in the city. They always talk about like what amenities are really selling well for people. And it's like dishwasher, blah, 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 pets available. What I'll tell you is the biggest thing that I find with people is that they want their building monthly to be as low as possible. So where I've been pushing my clients is into buildings that have really low monthly cost. What most of the country will know as HOA. What we know a little bit differently as like maintenance or common charges and taxes. I keep those as low as possible because those will only continue to go up. I mean, there's buildings in the city, especially like on the Upper East Side. They have maintenances, like a 2-bedroom will have a maintenance of like $9,000 a month, $10,000 a month. That's before your mortgage, that's just building operation. And that's never going down. Like you're never going to be able to pull that back a substantial amount unless somebody in the building wins the lottery and like really helps everybody out. But for the most part, it's not going to happen. So like if you're still finding buildings that have a low cost now, in the next 10, your building will only be more valuable because there's not more of those being built. Specifically co-ops. Condos, you'll always kind of see new development, but co-ops are where we're seeing a lot of strong pull this year. A lot of people are going that way. And I see a lot of
looking, right? Like you're looking for a place right now and you're looking for I know you've shown me a few of them like lofts, resales in that same way. And that's based on this idea that new builds, either you'd have to wait a long time or or like they're just too expensive right out the gate.
Yeah, they're too expensive. I mean, condos, really, you're not touching a condo, like a substantial condo until you're at like $1 million. You can get like some littler buildings, fine, maybe like 750, 800. But for the most part, like You need $1 million to really start getting into the condo and having a lot of option. So I'm looking at co-ops, which is nice. They do the job. I'm not too concerned because I understand what it is. I think there's a large learning curve for people when you're talking about co-ops because they're so random in the sense of they're not everywhere in the country. They're kind of city specific.
Yeah, why don't
I,
you explain that? What is a co-op, just for
yeah, so
competition?
you're not buying real property. You're buying shares of a corporation, and then those shares give you access or grant you the rights to the air rights within the the shell. You only own inside, the walls are owned by the building, the insides of the walls, you own the exterior part. The windows are owned by the building. It's very different. The process is the craziest part. I mean, they rip you apart financially just to make sure that you're not going to foreclose, which is why some people really like them because they don't have this massive turnover of foreclosure. It's just not as random. They're going to know if you're going to have the money or not, and they'll deny you and they don't have to tell you why. I think we'll see that change in the next year is those laws may be challenged. It's just tough. I had 2 doctors get denied from a building and I never got an answer as to why. It was the craziest thing. They were so qualified and the building was like, no. And that's it. They didn't have to say anything else, No was it.
Do those exist mainly are they throughout the city and the boroughs, or is that mainly just
Mhm.
on the in Manhattan or?
No, they
Yeah.
exist all throughout and they exist out on Long Island as well.
Okay.
But yeah, for the most part, I mean, there's a heavy concentration of them on the Upper East Side. There's another kind of co-op called an HDFC, and those were lofts that were converted into apartments, and the city subsidized them back in the 80s. And they have income restrictions, but they're really good for first-time home buyers because the monthly maintenance cost on those is $300, $400, very, very low. But they have very serious income caps. Once you buy it, you can make however much money you want, but you have to be making a certain amount of money. And often the income caps are 60 grand, 70 grand. It's a certain percent of the average area income.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's options though. I tell everyone you don't need $1 million to buy Manhattan. I can show you stuff that's 250 grand, as impossible as New York real estate seems, there is there is a lower market that you can look at.
Yeah, right. This is it. 250 grand.
Yeah, literally. I've sold some stuff for a lot of money that I'm wow, this is really small. This
it
is
is
a great choice.
Because I mean, the equivalent, because obviously our dad is always telling us to get into houses, especially me. He wanted me to buy one in Rochester for so long. And most of the stuff I was looking at for 500,000 in the suburb areas. And then you're sending me something and it's here it is. And it's literally one turn of your camera to see the entire place.
Literally.
Twice as much money. I'm what are we doing?
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's definitely crazy. But, there is an aspect of it where I think homeownership gives people stability. Every year and all renters really, are just waiting to see what the hell their landlord comes up with in terms of how much they're going to charge them to stay. And I think that can be very hard in the long run on people's mental. It's just am I going to be here next year or am I going to go? How much are you going to raise my rent? Are you going to raise it too much? When I moved in Manhattan in COVID, I lived in an apartment for 2 years and then they jacked my apartment up $1,500. I had to leave. I had to move. I couldn't stay in that apartment. And so I think, buying at a lower price point gets you into a monthly cost that's right around what you're paying for rent, but now you control it. So you don't have that housing instability, which I think a lot of people feel.
One thing I did just want to ask real quick. So obviously when you got in, it was pre-COVID, post-COVID, so many more people trying to get into real estate, so many more people going for their licenses and whatever. What do you think has changed from when you did it to now? And then how would you help somebody new? Because you have people on your team who are brand new. I remember you telling me you have a girl who's a little younger than us and she's brand new. So how are you advising somebody like that in a market that's so tough and so competitive, even more so than when you did it? And when you did it, you are the last one of 20.
Yeah, I don't think the market has gotten easier. That's what I'll say. real estate is a game of longevity. The longer you can stay in it, the better. Because you need time for people to start associating you with real estate. You can tell people I do real estate on day one. They're not going to really start thinking about you doing real estate until about year 3. Like you got to really start proving to people that what you do is legit. And I tell my people all the time, I ask them like once a week, I'm like, have you told the people in your life that you do real estate yet? Like that's step one. Like let the people know. You got to let everybody know. You can't shut the fuck up about the fact that you do real estate. Because honestly, like the moment you start telling people you do real estate, there's somebody right around the corner that's like, I just got my license actually yesterday. So I do real estate too now. Like there's always somebody. I think the shows have really changed the perception of real estate. It used to be seen as like kind of a shitty job, like not really a job that people wanted. Then it's like get a couple Netflix series, an HBO show, and it's like, boom, everybody wants to be in real estate now. I actually it's so crazy. I was out this weekend and I had someone stop me and he was like, I saw you on your show. You're like why I'm getting my license right now. Like I would love to interview you for your like whatever. Like I would love to interview you for your team. And that was like really crazy to have someone like stop me and start like telling me about myself and how they want to do real estate now. I was like, wow, that's super cool. Thanks. But it's like I face that every day. The amount of calls and DMs I get, oh, I'd love to grab lunch and talk about real estate. I'm like, sure, join the pool. There's only 36,000 others in these waters as well. Like, I will say though, the market, they say like 10% of the people do business. I think it's less than that. I think it's probably like 5% that are really doing
like people who invest. 95% of people fail. 5% are actually doing anything. I guess that would make sense, right?
Yeah. It's not an easy game. It's not easy money. You need to know how you're going to survive it in the beginning. I think a lot of people do it part-time in hopes that it'll eventually become full-time. I think it's a mistake because I don't know if you can do it part-time effectively enough to make it a full-time job.
Yeah, that's super fair. I used to tell Tanner, and like this was for myself, a day out of the market is a week out of the market. A week out of the market's a month out of the market. I remember I was on vacation for I think it was like 10 days. I came back. I felt like I was a year behind. I didn't know especially when things are so fast moving. If you're in a pace like New York City, or you're watching something like the market, which right now especially is going like dramatically in both directions, like you can't miss out because there's that person that's going to be hungrier, and they're going to be the one saying, I do real estate. They're going to make that extra call. Like at the end of the day, it's just about like how hungry you are to be the best at it in such a competitive and compelling industry.
Yeah, very early on, I always used to tell all of my clients, I'm like, I'm hungry. I'm like, not in a physical sense, but in a business sense. Like, I'm starving. You know what I mean? Like, I can't wait to work on your business.
I don't know. I would call some physical hunger in there at the beginning.
I was definitely, I was very physically hungry, my God. But it's like, I wasn't going to tell them that, Oh, and I'm broke. Not a great But, it worked out well in the beginning. And now after 6 years, it's like 90% of my business is referral at this point, which is what I wanted. That was like the business that I wanted to build because I know that referral business is usually the strongest business. You have the strongest connection with the clients. They trust you more because they have a very personal relationship with whoever's referring you for the most part. Like there's something about those clients that I find often convert a lot better than clients that are just like, I found your name online. They don't know me,
Now, I did want to ask you one thing because I always thought this was interesting about you yourself in business. I don't know if this is something that everybody does or not, but when you would close a sale, I remember when you were home and we would talk about like, a deal that you were closing, you would always go an extra mile to get a very personal gift for the house or for the closing if it was like a really big rental or whatever that was very specific to the client. Like I know you have some bigger named clients publicly, and you would always go that extra mile. Is that something you see? Do you think that has helped you? Like, I mean, I remember, I think you gave somebody like $1,000 vase, and I was like, why would you do that? But your reasoning was very interesting, and it doesn't seem like anybody that I know in real estate does things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. I always used to tell people like I'm horrible at giving gifts. And with real estate clients, like I love to give them like very interesting gifts. Something that makes sense. Like I gave my one client, she bought something in downtown Brooklyn in a new development, and I bought her this like really beautiful vase because I love to give my clients flowers. I think like flowers are really nice when you move into a new house. So I got her like a Tiffany vase, and then I gave her a coffee table book because she is a big reader. And I gave her a coffee table book from the architect that designed her building. And it was all of their other projects as well. I think going that extra mile and just ending your relationship with these people, not even ending because these are continuous relationships, but closing out that chapter with something as personal as that. It's like showing them that you're investing back into them what they've invested into you, which is trust, which is, time. They listen, people are not stupid. Like they know that I'm making money at the end of this deal. So if I can kind of give that back to them in a way that's very meaningful, I'd like to do that. A lot of people are like, yeah, you should just give 1% back to your clients. It's like, honestly, I would rather like spend the money and give you something that's like very nice for your home, or I don't know. Everybody looks at things differently. I just like to make sure that my clients feel like we have a more personal relationship than just like, well, good luck out there.
Yeah, right. Here's some money. Have at it.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like not the same. Like a gift card to dinner, like it's just like it's not
Yeah.
my style, but it works for some people.
And to get that information, to know what to get them, you do a lot of prep before you even meet with people. Like we had a call earlier this week. You had a client and you were looking for more information on that person. And
Yeah.
I feel like, is that something that a lot of people are doing in that industry? Like, are they doing all this preliminary preparation for meetings where you really study the person that you're going to be meeting with, the buyer or the seller, getting a good handle on their background, what they're interested in? It feels like you're doing things that none of my other friends that are in real estate are doing. Is that something that's common? Am I just misinterpreting the situation as more cooler than it is?
They should be. I love to go into a room and pretend like I don't know who the hell this person is. Meanwhile, I've got like their entire LinkedIn in the back of my head. I'm like running through it, asking them questions to see if I can get them to touch on every point that I know about them. I mean, it's just how I like to enter a room. I don't like to come in and just have no idea who the hell I'm talking to. So I do a lot of research beforehand. I'm very research oriented though. So for me, like it's a very fun game to just like build out a profile around these people and figure out really who they are. Um, some people go in blind though, they don't care. I just am at the point I've wasted a lot of time on people. So I don't want to be giving time to people that aren't legit, aren't real. So I do a little more research just to make sure that these are people that are going to represent my reputation in a good light as well, because I'm interacting with other agents. And if I have known for bringing clients around that aren't good, or don't present well, or say crude things, I don't know, like there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And your reputation is very fickle. You screw it with the wrong person, it's over. So I like to make sure that I have all my ducks in a row.
Yeah, it's always been very interesting to watch you work. I mean, thankfully, well, I guess not thankfully, but you happened to be home at the same time I was home during COVID. Yeah. And it was such a process to watch you work and really work through each client, and then also recognize like just the trends. And that's why I think we've had two of these podcasts now. We have one on my YouTube channel where we were down in Florida talking about the market. Was that last year or 2 years ago? I think that was 2 years.
Last year.
That was last year? Yeah, where we're talking about the market. And most of what we had talked, I listened to it again. Most of what we had talked about and what we anticipated what was going to happen over the next year has played out. So it's always been very interesting to watch kind of your recognition of the trends in the market, and then also combine my opinions on the financial side. Because while New York City as a market is very, I don't know, kind of stands on its own, it's also nice to tie in some of the more macro happenings of the world and how that's going to impact the market, and then make accurate predictions on what's going to come over the next.
I will say there is like a marriage of the financial mind and the real estate mind. I think I do interact with some clients that are in finance directly. And I often find like in the beginning I kind of butt heads with them a little bit because like they come at it with like such a fervor for what they believe, and like that's fine. The market that you guys are watching and then the market that I'm like existing in every day, while they're closely related, I don't think they like mirror each other as heavily as it may seem. I know you guys, the market kind of like took a turn, right? Like last week.
Yeah, last few weeks, just a smidge.
Yeah, not great, right? I didn't necessarily see that major crash play out in real estate, if I'm being honest. I also, interestingly enough, in New York City, Wall Street wages actually account for 23%. Wall Street wages account for 23% of total wages in New York City.
Really?
And I always know when it's bonus season, because right about now, you start getting the Wall Street calls because now they're ready to go buy something. But yeah, I've been hearing that it has not looked good.
It's deal season and then bonus season. Rolex, Gucci slides, apartment.
Yeah, new house. I mean, the bonuses people get are crazy. It's like it helps them pay for the houses,
Yeah, who's your favorite type of client? Like what industry, what does the quintessential client look like? I know you said younger people, but like
to be honest,
yeah.
My bread and butter is like a middle-aged woman. I love them. Love them. I can tell you how many like single or like divorced, just like middle-aged women I've worked with, and I fucking love them. They're so fun. Like they know what they like. They're great clients. They're very loyal. Like they're nice to hang out with. They always like have very interesting jobs. I really, really love them. I also love like a young first-time home buyer, like early 20s. They're great because like they just don't know what's going on, and I can really be there to help them. And it's very fun to like be out with them and showing them stuff. It's very different, like every client that I have is so different. And there will be days where I just do showings all day long. And by the time I get home, I just like have to hide in my room and not talk to anyone, because it's like I have been on all day. I'm like playing like 15 different roles. And I'm a terrible actor. So it's like really just me all day long, just blah, 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 blah. Filling dead air, because it's like amazing. When I started interviewing team, I would answer the phone and I would just free ball. I'd be like, so what's up? And I would just see like how conversational they were. And there was a lot of people that like were smart, but I let go because they just were not conversational. But you have to be in this job. Like you really just have to be able to fill the air. Like just keep talking. Like just keep throwing darts at the wall until they say something. But yeah, middle-aged women are my favorite. I love them. I always say like club kids are fun to hang out with, and middle-aged women like help me pay my bills. Like it's really that is like my market, and I love them. It's great.
Well, I don't think I have anything else, Dan. If you do, let me know. If not, we'll close it out. We'll give a little promo to John one more time. But
yeah, no, it's been super informative. I appreciate the insight and coming on.
Yeah,
of course. Thank you guys for having me.
You're the first episode we've had with video, so that'll be nice.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, on Spotify and Apple, it'll be still up, right? We can't do.
You can upload video on there. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be video. It'll be video for all.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, cool. So for anybody who's listening, we've got Apple, Spotify, now on Substack. We'll link you on it, John, because you have a Substack as well. So I can make it a collaborative thing. So it'll go to both. It'll go to my audience. I don't think it'll go to your audience, but you can like restack it on.
Send it out. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it will
go
to
a promo.
Yeah. Give us a promo.
All right. Well, if you love real estate, if this conversation has just made you die for more, you can find my Substack. It's called Finding Space. And I'm weekly still, but I may go bi-weekly. I write about New York City. I write about different housing developments, apartments that I'm seeing, news that I think you should be following. When I travel, I'll give you a rundown of where I'm traveling to, the market there. I love to see what's going on in the rest of the country and the rest of the world. So I'm always trying to figure out what the situation is, where to stay, what to eat, stuff like that. You can follow me on Instagram. It's just my name, @JonathanYarton. I post a lot of shit there. And that's about it. You can watch me on Selling the Hampton season 2 on HBO. I think that's it. I don't know. But yeah, for the most part, find me on Substack or find me on Instagram.
Definitely the Instagram, the stories, like all the buildings that you're posting, like you're always posting listings. And even I'm not in the market to buy homes, but I do like to watch your stories and then go to the listings just to like see. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's a blast.
It's a gorgeous thing to watch, honestly. I like to curate a fun, I call it my channel. I like to create a fun channel vibe for people to watch.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on, John. We'll have
course,
it
guys.
uploaded by this afternoon, and I'll send you the links and everything.
Cool.
But yeah, we'll talk to you later.
Now watch this drive.